Why does gripping tighter to control only make life feel more unmanageable? Why do the nights spent running through every possible scenario never actually bring calm? Why does worrying about a job make the job harder to bear? And why does clinging to a relationship out of fear make it more likely to crack? Why does trying to pin down the future only make it feel more like a maze with no exit? Most of us are raised to believe worry is a form of responsibility, that if we think hard enough and long enough, we can head off mistakes and keep our lives in check. But what if that very belief is the thing quietly keeping us from the peace and the good things that have been within reach all along? Carl Jung didn't see anxiety as evidence of a sharp or awakened mind. He saw it as the opposite, a sign of the conscious ego straining, uselessly, to grip something it was never built to hold. Fear of the unknown keeps manufacturing worst-case scenarios, and in doing so, it drowns out the quieter voice that speaks from deeper inside us, from the unconscious. As long as the mind stays tangled in guesses and static, all we hear is our own anxiety bouncing back at us, instead of the guidance trying to reach us from within. This piece will walk through an idea rarely said out loud. The worry sitting so heavily on your mind was never actually helping. It's one of the ego's more convincing tricks, one that makes the thing you want even more likely to slip away. Stick with it to the end, because by the close we'll circle back to a single question: what opens up once your last worry finally goes quiet? 1. How anxiety actually works. The ego's trap. When anxiety shows up, most people assume it's a sensible reaction to uncertainty, that they're simply being careful, being thorough, bracing for whatever might go wrong. But in Jung's framework, anxiety isn't triggered by events themselves. It's triggered by how the mind interprets those events. Two people can face the exact same situation. One stays steady, the other can't sleep for days. The difference isn't the circumstance, it's the part of the psyche that insists on staying in charge. This is where Jung pointed to the mind's central trap. People think they're preparing for life, when really, they're just responding to their fear of not knowing what's coming. Jung called this control center of consciousness the ego, the part of us that lets us recognize who we are, separate ourselves from our surroundings, and function with some sense of stability day to day. The ego isn't a flaw. It's essential to conscious life. The trouble starts only when it takes on a job it was never equipped for, trying to make the future fully knowable. To the ego, certainty equals safety, and uncertainty always looks like danger. So whenever it runs into a question it can't answer, its instinct is to fill that blank space with assumptions, which is exactly why so much worry appears before anything has actually happened. It's manufactured while the future is still an empty page. Someone sends off a job application and pictures rejection immediately. A mother whose child is a few minutes late starts imagining accidents. Someone facing a small medical procedure jumps straight to the worst outcome. None of these things are happening in the present. What's actually active is the imagination, straining to map out every possibility as a way of clawing back a feeling of control. So anxiety isn't a response to reality. It's a response to the mind's discomfort with reality being, for now, out of reach. Jung called this the illusion of control. We convince ourselves that more thinking equals more safety, that rehearsing more scenarios means fewer surprises. On the surface, that sounds sensible, but underneath is a real contradiction. The mind doesn't just want to understand the future, it wants to own it. It can't tolerate the fact that life will always contain territory that can't be mapped in advance. So it keeps generating imaginary crises to soothe its own unease. This is close to what Jung meant when he wrote that until the unconscious is made conscious, it will run your life while you call it fate. His point wasn't that events are predetermined, it's that when we don't notice the machinery running underneath our thoughts, we let it color everything we feel and perceive, mistaking its output for objective truth. Consider the polar explorer Roald Amundsen. Before his expedition to the South Pole, he spent years studying the conditions, building his skills, and mapping out every detail he could control. But once that work was done, He didn't sit around rehearsing disasters that hadn't happened. He understood that preparation belonged to him. The weather, the ice, and the countless variables of nature never did. That clarity about where the boundary sat is what let him keep a clear head. The point of the story isn't heroism. It's a simple distinction. Preparation is rooted in what's real, while worry tries to substitute imagination for it. Jung never suggested getting rid of the ego. That is impossible. What he wanted was to put it back in its proper place. Someone using a map for guidance doesn't mistake the map for the actual landscape. The ego works the same way, invaluable for observing, weighing options, and deciding in the present, but the moment it believes it must control the whole future, the map takes over from the territory and assumptions start outweighing reality. From there, anxiety becomes a default defense, not because the world is unusually dangerous, but because the mind can't accept that life will always exceed its ability to predict it. So for Jung, anxiety isn't defined by the feeling itself, but by the psychological structure producing it, the conscious mind's attempt to hold on to control in a world that was never built to obey it. As long as we believe we need to know everything in advance before we're allowed to feel calm, anxiety will keep standing watch at the edge of the future. Only once we see that this whole setup is built on an illusion of control can we start to see the worry itself for what it really is. 2. Anxiety doesn't solve anything, it just drains your energy. Have you ever ended a day having accomplished almost nothing, yet felt completely wiped out, as if you'd been working for hours straight? That exhaustion doesn't come from doing, it comes from looping. A conversation replayed in your head, an outcome that hasn't happened yet, a decision still hanging. Any of these alone can leave a person completely depleted. Jung didn't treat this as ordinary tiredness. He argued that every act of consciousness draws from a limited well of psychological energy, the same current that fuels our ability to act, create, learn, love, and adapt. When anxiety kicks in, the first casualty isn't the outcome of our lives. It's the flow of that inner current. Jung used the word libido for this force, but not in the narrow sexual sense most people associate with it. For him, it meant the full driving energy behind psychological life. Every decision, every idea, every step forward draws on this reserve to become real. Picture a river feeding a network of fields. While the water flows freely, everything downstream flourishes. Block one section, and the whole system starts to stagnate. Jung saw anxiety working exactly this way. It doesn't generate strength or produce answers. It dams the current, forcing the same energy to circle endlessly in one spot. Jung once wrote that what fits one person will pinch another, that there's no universal formula for living. Usually that line gets read as a nod to individuality, but it also says something about energy. When people get stuck in repetitive thought loops, they're often unconsciously hunting for a perfect formula before they'll act. Life doesn't hand out guaranteed formulas. The harder we search for a solution with zero risk, the more our energy gets locked into deliberation instead of turning into lived experience, which is why so many people feel they spent an entire day living only inside their own heads. I once knew a young architect who spent close to 2 years nursing the idea of starting his own firm. He reworked his designs over and over, revised his budget dozens of times, and catalogued every conceivable risk. His friends admired the diligence, and he believed he was inching closer to launch. But opening day never came. Every new plan spawned another round of recalculating. Years went by, and the only thing that kept growing was the stack of project files. From a Jungian angle, this wasn't a failure of skill. It happened because his entire reserve of psychological energy got trapped in the loop itself. Water that never reaches the field can't make anything grow. Nature runs on flow. Standing water stagnates. Sealed air goes stale. Blood that stops moving threatens the whole body. Jung believed our inner life obeys the same law. Energy only does its job when it keeps converting awareness into action, emotion into experience, ideas into something made. Anxiety does the reverse. It locks the whole current around a single fixed point, like a millstone spinning endlessly with no grain being fed into it. So the real problem isn't that people worry too much. It's that they mistake mental activity for mental progress. Those are two different things. A mind working effectively pushes energy forward, turning awareness into concrete steps. A mind ruled by anxiety keeps that same energy spinning in a closed loop. The faster it spins, the more exhausted a person gets, while the distance to any actual answer stays exactly the same. Seen this way, anxiety doesn't solve problems, isn't just a comforting phrase, it's close to a working principle of Jung's psychology. He wanted people to grasp that inner energy is both valuable and finite. Every repeated loop of thought eats into the reserve that should be going toward creating, learning, and acting. Long before a real challenge ever tests us, anxiety has often already spent much of the fuel we'd need to meet it. 3. Where anxiety really comes from: clinging to an image. Not every worry starts with something about to happen. A lot of anxiety is rooted in a quieter question: what if people see me differently now? A small setback can leave someone unsettled for days, not because the consequences are severe, but because it threatens an image they've spent years building. Jung believed much of our anxiety traces back not to the event itself, but to a person's relationship with the mask they've been wearing for too long. Eventually, they stop protecting their actual life and start protecting only how they appear to others. Jung called this mask the persona, not a lie and not something to throw away. Think of it like bark on an old tree. It shields the trunk from sun, wind, insects, and time, letting the tree survive in a harsh environment. But imagine if the tree came to believe it was the bark, that a single chip in the surface meant its whole life was ending. People do something similar. Our roles, reputation, status, and public image are outer layers that help us function in society. They were never meant to define the whole person. Yet many of us spend a lifetime forgetting that. The real trouble starts when the persona stops being a tool we use and becomes an identity we cling to, what Jung called identification. A mother stops seeing parenting as one part of her life and starts treating it as the entire measure of her worth. A public figure stops separating career from self, letting fame decide how valuable they feel. Once that fusion happens, every external shift lands as a direct hit on the core self. Jung described the persona as what a person is not in reality, but what both they and others take them to be. That line still holds up as a mirror. What actually causes suffering isn't having a persona, it's forgetting that it's only a persona. Once both the person and everyone around them mistake the mask for the real face, every compliment becomes fuel and every criticism becomes a wound. A minor setback at work turns into "I'm a failure." Trouble in a marriage becomes proof of "I'm not enough." The event itself is a passing gust, but it's enough to rattle an entire inner world, because underneath the worry about work or money or relationships is usually a deeper effort to defend an image, the successful one, the strong one, the happy one, the person who's always right. Modern psychology arrives at something close to this through the idea of contingent self-worth. When a person's sense of value depends entirely on achievement, status, or recognition, their nervous system stays on constant alert for anything that threatens those props. Different vocabulary, same underlying insight. The more our worth gets tied to an external image, the more exposed we are to anxiety, because any disturbance to that image reads to us as a threat to our existence itself. I once sat with a man in a therapy session who ran the company his father had built. He arrived immaculately dressed, spoke with total composure, and kept his emotions locked down almost entirely. When finally asked what he feared most, he answered, after a long pause, that it wasn't losing the company. It was the thought that people might stop calling him successful. The room went quiet. What he'd actually been guarding all along wasn't the business. It was a mask that had fused to his face over decades, and that fusion turned every business setback into a full-blown identity crisis. The deeper we identify with the persona, the more we resemble a sailor spending his life polishing the paint on his boat while neglecting the timber that actually keeps it afloat. When a storm strips the paint, he assumes the ship is destroyed, even though the hull is fine. Jung never dismissed the value of the persona. He just insisted we not confuse the paint with the ship or the role with the person playing it. Seen this way, a huge share of the worry that feels like it comes from life itself is really just an effort to protect the self-image we built. 4. Only a quiet mind can hear what's been guiding it all along. Picture a still lake at dawn. While the wind is blowing, ripples keep breaking up the surface, and the sky above looks fractured into pieces. The moment the wind drops, the whole sky appears perfectly reflected in the water. The sky never changed, only the state of the lake did. Jung believed the human mind runs on the same principle. Anxiety doesn't take away our deeper wisdom. It just stirs the water enough that we lose sight of what was there the entire time. Beneath everyday consciousness, he believed, sits a far larger psychological center he called the self. If the ego is a lantern lighting only the next few steps, the self is more like a sky full of stars guiding a traveler across open desert. The person holding the lantern assumes that small circle of light is all there is, while the stars never stopped shining. We've just been staring at the ground too long to look up. The self isn't something that shows up in one dramatic moment. It's been there the whole time, waiting for consciousness to grow quiet enough to notice it. Jung didn't treat the unconscious as merely a storage room for forgotten memories or suppressed instincts. He saw it more like a vast old library beneath the house of consciousness. Upstairs, people go about their day, emails, decisions, problems to solve. Downstairs, that library keeps holding experiences, symbols, and patterns the conscious mind hasn't yet grown large enough to take in. When the noise upstairs gets loud enough, we stop hearing the pages turning below, but the library hasn't gone anywhere. It's simply waiting for a quiet enough moment for its doors to open. Jung once wrote that those who look outward dream, and those who look inward wake up. That's not a call to withdraw from the world. It's a nudge to redirect attention. Most of the time, we search for answers by scanning our surroundings, watching for cues from other people, or forcing ourselves to think just one more round. Jung pointed somewhere else entirely. Many of life's most important moments don't arrive because the inner voice gets louder. They arrive because it finally goes quiet. The busier a marketplace gets, the harder it is to hear a distant temple bell. The mind works the same way. Intuition doesn't vanish under anxiety. It just gets drowned out by too many competing voices. In Jung's thinking, intuition isn't a vague hunch or a mystical gift. It's more like a seed buried in soil. A gardener can't yank a sprout upward by force. All they can do is offer good soil, enough moisture, and a calm setting for growth to happen on its own. Plenty of people try to force an answer to appear immediately, the way someone might dig up the soil daily just to check if the seed has sprouted, and the more impatient they get, the less likely anything grows. Jung wanted us to see that intuition needs that same patience. It doesn't respond to pressure. It shows up once the inner world stops being constantly disturbed by one worry chasing the next. The history of discovery is full of moments that echo this. Newton wasn't chasing gravity down through anxious effort. He was quietly watching an orchard. Henri Poincaré once described a stubborn mathematical answer arriving unbidden as he stepped onto a carriage right when his mind had stopped straining for it. These aren't meant to make intuition seem mystical. They point to something very human. When consciousness stops insisting on filling the whole stage, the mind's deeper connections finally get room to surface. There's a similar image in the biblical story of Elijah, who found what he was searching for not in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire, but in a still, small voice. That image carries more than religious weight. It points to a real psychological truth. The things that matter most rarely announce themselves through noise. They surface in the stillness we so rarely allow ourselves. Reconnecting with this inner sense doesn't require some dramatic life change. It can start with 10 quiet minutes a day, setting daily concerns aside, following the breath, letting thoughts drift by like clouds instead of fighting them or trying to force the mind blank. Practice consistently, this slowly separates awareness from the reflexive reactions daily pressure keeps triggering. Over time, those small pockets of quiet help you tell the difference between the noise of fear and the quieter tone of your own nature, and intuition becomes a steady companion on the path toward what Jung called individuation. Anxiety keeps insisting that one more round of thinking, one more layer of analysis, one more attempt at control will finally produce the answer. Jung pointed the opposite way. Many of life's real turning points don't start with a new thought, they start with a new state of mind. Just as the lake only reflects the whole sky once the wind dies down, we only start to hear the self once the waves of anxiety stop covering the surface. Inside that quiet, intuition stops seeming mysterious and becomes simply the native language of our deeper nature. 5. When the worry stops, things start falling into place. At some point you notice that the real shift isn't that anxiety disappears. It's that you no longer feel the need to fight against life itself. Every decision used to feel like rowing upstream. The harder you force things your way, the heavier the oars got, the more tired your arms became, the stronger the current seemed to push back. As the worry settles, a different rhythm appears. The river hasn't changed. The boat hasn't changed. What's changed is that you've stopped resisting the current. Jung saw this as a marker of approaching individuation, living in step with your deeper nature instead of under the rule of the ego's fears. In that state, he pointed to something he called synchronicity, not a miracle, not simple cause and effect, but a meaningful overlap between your inner life and events unfolding around you. A meeting happens right when you need it. A book falls open to exactly the passage you needed. An opportunity shows up right when relentless chasing had failed to produce it. What's changed isn't the laws of the universe, it's that you're no longer viewing life through fear, and so you start noticing connections that were always there but invisible to you before. Jung wrote that within all chaos there's an order, and within every misfortune some hidden good. That's not a promise of a hardship-free life. It's a reminder that beneath apparent chaos, there's usually a deeper structure. While anxiety runs the show, we only see disconnected fragments and conclude life is working against us. Once the mind settles, those same fragments start forming a larger picture. What looked like disappointment turns out to be a doorway. What felt like a painful loss becomes the start of something new. That order was always there. Anxiety was just blocking the view. I think of a young entrepreneur who spent almost a year relentlessly networking, chasing every event, and pushing to land the perfect investor. The harder he pushed, the more tangled things got. Eventually, he stopped chasing opportunities and focused instead on refining his product. Not long after, a past customer introduced him to the person who'd become his most important business partner. The shift wasn't better planning, it was that he'd finally stopped trying to control every step. Only once he quit chasing every door did he notice the right one had opened quietly while he wasn't looking. The ease Jung described has nothing to do with getting everything you want. It's closer to the wisdom of a gardener who knows which season is for planting, which for pruning, and which simply calls for waiting while the trees do their own growing. The gardener still shows up every day, but stops yanking the seedlings upward out of impatience, trusting that growth runs on its own timetable. Human life works the same way. When the worry eases, we keep working, loving, and facing what comes, but we stop forcing everything onto a schedule built out of fear. That shift produces a lightness completely different from the satisfaction of muscling life into submission, because life always holds more than the narrow calculations of the rational mind can account for. Instead of straining to arrange every outcome while dreading tomorrow, we start moving with real trust in how things unfold. Ease doesn't mean an absence of challenges. It means that whatever comes, we find the path that fits the moment. Each event carries its own piece of meaning, contributing to the larger shape of who we're becoming. And that's where one of life's real paradoxes shows up. Peace isn't the reward for successfully controlling everything. Peace shows up the moment you stop believing that controlling everything was ever the price of admission for it. Jung never told anyone to passively surrender to fate. He simply pointed out that life is always bigger than the ego's plans. Once anxiety finally quiets down, you stop moving through life like someone running from the future. You move instead with the steady confidence of someone who trusts that every experience has its place in the process of becoming who you actually are. And it's often from exactly that place that life starts arranging itself with a harmony far greater than anything force could have produced. In the end, life isn't an impossible problem demanding the perfect answer before we're allowed to live it. It's a current that only asks for the willingness to stop fighting it. Letting go of the need to control everything doesn't cost you strength. It clears the way for a deeper, steadier order to show itself. The knots in your work, the cracks in your relationships, the uncertainty about what's ahead, all beginning to settle into place the moment the mind returns to its own stillness.